And now we just watched the horns of the truck drivers. So since the Mahabharata was called the Battle of Kurukshetra, I saw the truck drivers warning to us all, their horns signaling to us, this moment is dangerous, wake up, pay attention. I called it the Battle of Kurukshetra. These honorable, honest workers who have no other motivation, who contrary to the malignant rumors spread about them are not working for foreign powers, are not in any way dangerous. In fact, they're the road warriors who keep our driving on the highways safe because they're so good at what they do. Let us now listen in this historical moment to the honesty of the truck drivers and to the candid honesty of the yogic knowledge of the culture of India that say to us the sanctity of the individual should not be damaged by any situation. We should ensure the sanctity of our individuality. Namaste, and welcome to Vedic Vidya. My name is Jeffrey Armstrong, Govinda Rishi. Vedic Vidya is available exclusively on Citti Media English channel on Sunday nights at 7 p.m. IST. Our topic tonight is the trucker protest and the sacred and inviolable rights of the individual, or how human rights had its origin in the Vedic culture of India. Is the historical topic of the hour in our times, and one of the most historically important topics of all time in the history of our planet when it was discussed 5,561 years ago, when the Bhagavad Gita was spoken. This topic is, what are the rights of the individual? What is the individual? Who is the individual? And what are the sacred rights that pertain to their individuality? This is the very basic of what we now call yoga and of the entirety of the knowledge that came to us from India. And this knowledge is now being demonstrated for us in a modern context as we see a struggle, a modern day struggle, to define the boundaries and rights and responsibilities of the individual in relationship to those who have responsibility as governors of the larger affairs of state of those individuals. This is a very important question that has been acted out throughout history. And in our times, this question is arising in a new and interesting way. It used to be that the boundaries of individuality were fairly clear because they were the capabilities of expressing our individuality. And we were limited to horseback. We were limited to a slower moving culture. We were limited to weapons that were basically carried by the individual for most of history. And so individuality was very organic, very much a practical and common sense matter of understanding that a good way to measure your boundary of individuality is extend your hands, and at the tip of your fingers, that's your circle. Technically, anyone who enters that circle should do so with your permission. You could call that your boundary. Everyone has a boundary, an appropriateness boundary. And it should be that except for extraordinarily dire circumstances, no one violates that circle. This is the ancient definition. But in India, an even more ancient definition arose. And this is the fundamental question for us as human beings. Are we simply a manifestation within matter that has only one lifetime? Or are we immortal beings who are visiting the realm of matter? And in which case, have many, many, many thousands, millions of lifetimes. In the one case, we have one lifespan. That's the current worldview of modern science, of Christianity, of Islam, and of Judaism, with no prejudice against or for anyone at this point, just for your consideration. One of the worldviews is a one lifetime worldview. Born once, that's your opportunity as a human, then you depart. And in that case, we don't have a direct connection to all the other living entities on our planet. The second viewpoint is that we are immortal beings. The term in Sanskrit is we are each an individual Atma, A-T-M-A, an undying, unbreakable, uncuttable, unburnable, unwettable spark in eternity who are visiting this realm of matter. That is the worldview of yoga. That is the worldview of the culture we now call India. And that worldview is the basis of a particular conception of individuality that came to North America when Europeans came and colonized North America. The indigenous peoples of America gave a system of government to the people who were colonizing America, the continent that was previously that of the indigenous people. And the First Nations culture gave them what was eventually to be the U.S. Constitution, constitutional democracy, individuals voting together to influence the policy of their leaders, and the individuals in the tribe, in the group, having the ability to toss out the leader if the leader violated the fundamental principles of the culture. This brings us to our modern day dilemma. But something is happening right now to us that has created a problem greater than we've ever experienced before. And we've just been watching this on television. The impulse or the circumstance that gave rise to this dilemma is a disease of some kind that has now been visible on our planet for a couple of years. The response to that disease, the response to its possibility, is the question of the hour. And we're now seeing that question test the very fabric of government throughout the world. Because it asks the question, what can we do to the individual that protects society and doesn't or does violate the boundaries of the individual, the actual individuality? So, first, the Vedic view, we are immortal beings, and we have gone through all the species. We become human, and our agreement as humans is we should cooperate with the laws of nature and have the least negative impact upon one another that we possibly can, allowing each other to exist and be individuals, but finding a cooperative way to live together. That is the basis of the culture of India, that was badly threatened and ravaged and damaged by colonization for hundreds of years. The perpetrators, the English, various European powers at various times throughout the world, all under the aegis, under the flag of Christianity. Probably not their best moment. But setting that aside, just think for a moment that the individual has been conducting a many lifetime journey, thousands of lifetimes, and that it is only the individual and their actions and their attitudes that will complete that journey, that will allow them to graduate from the process that we call life here in the realm of matter. It is that worldview that sees the individual rights as so crucial and important. The other worldview is only one lifetime. So its tendency, if it's not careful, is to become demagoguery, is to become violent absolute power, is to take away all human rights, confine all human actions to certain boundaries artificially created by the peoples who are supposedly leading, by the people who are supposedly leading the culture. But at a certain point, they say, you have no free will. At this moment in history, we're watching the testing of that premise. Let me give you an example. As we watched this historical problem evolve, some cultures decided that the individual has no right over choosing a particular method of health and healing. Because right now in the Western civilization, we only have a method of medicine, the allopathic medicine method, which is considered to be, now listen carefully, co-equal with truth, government. It is the one way to be healthy. Whereas throughout the world, there are alternative systems of healing, methods of healing, which include diet, herbs, medicines, all kinds of medical practices and procedures, an understanding of our intrinsic nature at birth. Those methodologies are not currently considered by Western civilization to be medicine. So you could say that, in a sense accidentally, modern medicine, modern pharmaceutical companies, and technology which has now become completely all-pervasive and invasive, have conspired together loosely, not as a conspiracy per se, but to have the ability to absolutely control human behavior. This is the historical moment we find ourselves in. And I personally found it remarkable and very unique and interesting that the people who are driving our goods all across the country, that the truck drivers, and think of it as a metaphor, they're in the truck and they're on a mission, and each mission is an independent mission. Think of it as a lifetime. Each trucker has a lifetime. They drive from here to here, transporting the necessities of life. That they are the ones who brought the violation of individuality to our attention is truly amazing and wonderful, because they had no other philosophy that they were projecting other than the right of the individual to exist, uninvaded by anything else that was unnecessary. And so we find ourselves looking at the culture of Canada right now and seeing that in a country we thought was the gentle essence of democracy, we see the threat of demagoguery, which we have never seen from Canada before in this particular way. Prime Minister Trudeau refused any talks with the protesters, refused to communicate with them, to everyone's surprise, then imposed the National Security Emergency Act, unprecedented power, unprecedented use of force, in the face of something which he previously would have called a democratic process, a protest against something that might be problematic. He froze bank accounts. He did things that we could only think of with historical figures that were demagogues. We could only think of those who used singularly brutal powers to accomplish their aims. And yet, prior to that, he was considered the poster man, the poster boy for democracy. We're observing something very important here. And it requires a new definition of our individual rights. And that definition in India is rooted in a long view where someone like Narendra Modi was careful to set a precedent and an example of listening and communicating. And we have just seen one of the supposedly most benign modern democracies go off the rails, become a demagoguery, become a militant, intolerant, dangerous government. I would propose to you that this is a warning signal for us to re-examine how our world is evolving. You'll notice that people were booted offline by Trudeau. Their bank accounts were frozen. This signals to us we're in a very precarious moment where excessive force is increasingly going to be possible because of technology, where moneyed interests have unprecedented amounts of influence controlling the behavior of politicians and of all people. This is a warning, a historical moment in which we should all pay careful attention, that the rights that are intrinsic to us, and if you follow the thinking of our true immortal self in eternity, a true individuality that does not die, then this challenge needs to be met not just with arguments over medicine and science, but rather with what the truck drivers were wise enough to present to us, which is mandates of all kinds in the midst of very familiar disease, a kind of flu, that should escalate to mandates based on fear, control, dominance, dominating income, dominating who's online. All of these demagogic forms of action should be a warning to us. And when I heard the truck drivers, I heard the horns honking, blaring, and at the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, in the Mahabharata, in the great epic story in India of the threat to human individuality, what we saw was, before the battle began, they blew upon conch shells and trumpets, as was the custom. That was 5,561 years ago. It's the key struggle over democracy, over the individual. And now we just watched the horns of the truck drivers. So since the Mahabharata was called the Battle of Kurukshetra, I saw the truck drivers warning to us all, their horns signaling to us, this moment is dangerous, wake up, pay attention. I called it the Battle of Kurukshetra. These honorable, honest workers who have no other motivation, who, contrary to the malignant rumors spread about them, are not working for foreign powers, are not in any way dangerous. In fact, they're the road warriors who keep our driving on the highways safe because they're so good at what they do. Let us now listen in this historical moment to the honesty of the truck drivers and to the candid honesty of the yogic knowledge of the culture of India that say to us the sanctity of the individual should not be damaged by any situation. We should ensure the sanctity of our individuality. Vedic Vidya means shining the light of truth. Tune in to Vedic Vidya on the Citti Media English channel, Sunday nights, 7 p.m. IST. My name is Kavindra Rishi, Jeffrey Armstrong. See you next time, and have a Namas day.
Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.